afternoon. It has been a busy day, and I did not do a sneak peek post, so you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you're smart and you've been paying attention to what we've been doing, I bet you already know. Now, what you may not know, unless you are watching me on a different platform, we have been banned on that platform for a couple of weeks, and so I have to be very, very careful on my words. So please kind of bear with me here. In the comments, everything in the comments is going to be okay, but when I am talking to you, I have to be very, very careful of my words. Now, these two reports that I'm bringing to you crossed my desk yesterday, and so it is very, very up to the minute and that kind of thing. So I'm excited about that. I'm hoping that as I kind of go through this with you, that I am very careful of my words, because I do not want to get another strike, because if I do, I'll be deplatformed for 3 months and I will miss talking to you. I appreciate the time you give us. I appreciate the time that you tune in and all that kind of good stuff. So today we're going to talk about some scientists that said that we made a big mistake when we constructed what is going around that everybody is getting, that comes in 2 doses. So we're just going to leave it at that. All right, this is from a scientist from Ontario in Canada. Now, we've been talking about this. This is not new news to you. If you have been looking at the news in the recent days, like so many people have called and said, Dr. Paula, you've been talking about this for 6 months. Yes, but it's just been on mainstream media for the last 2 days. So we are kind of ahead of the way, and so I'm excited about that. But this is from a scientist in Ontario, and he said, we made a big mistake. We did not realize it until now. We thought, I can't really say this word right now, was going to be a great target antigen. We never knew that this particular component itself was a toxin and it was a pathogenic protein. So if I'm talking in code, it is for the fact checkers, okay? I definitely don't want to be talking in code to you, but we have to be very, very careful, because as I say, the truth hurts and people don't want the truth to come out, all right? So by people going and getting their 2 doses, we inadvertently inoculated them with a toxin. So this is something that should be very upsetting to all of us. I will just tell you, when we do energetic testing with our people that come in to see us, normally we do a baseline testing, and normal for a healthy person is between 75 and 85 hertz, okay? And you have to use that term in context with what I do, okay? So with the software I use, the technology I use, between 75 and 85 means that you're healthy. We are having people that come in post medical treatment, all right, and their baseline is now down in the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, the 30s, which is extremely, extremely low. Now, this is a vibratory frequency, all right? This is not your chemistry. This is not something that's going to show up on a medical test necessarily. This is about frequency. We test frequency. Why is that? Because your body resonates just like a symphony with different instruments. You've got your winds, you've got your strings, you've got your horns, you've got your percussion, you've got all the different instruments that are in those categories, right? So when you go to a concert and everybody is in tune, everybody is harmonized, it sounds very, very melodious. Everybody is playing at the right frequency. When you are, I used to play clarinet in the band, okay, when I was in high school. And if you didn't get that reed moistened exactly right, or if the reed was old, it could crack, it could squeak, and it was horrible. It was the most embarrassing thing in the whole world. And that it would produce a frequency that clashed with everything else. So back to my story, what we're finding is that people that are doing these new experimental treatments are having their baseline vibrational frequencies plummet, and we don't know why other than they've had these experimental treatments. So I'm just going to throw that out there. It is not good for your immune system. And this scientist, his name is Byram Brittle. He is a viral immunologist and associate professor at a university in Ontario. We've talked about him before. He was awarded a $230,000 grant by the Canadian government last year for research into this kind of inoculation development. Okay, he and a group of international scientists have filed a request for information from the Japanese regulatory agency in order to get access to biodistribution studies for the P trial. We'll just put it that way. Biodistribution studies are used to determine where an injected compound travels in the body and which tissues or organs it accumulates in. This is the first time ever that scientists have been privy to seeing where the mRNA goes after injection. Brittle said in an interview that when he first disclosed the data, quote, "Is it a safe assumption to say that it stays in the shoulder muscle? The short answer is absolutely not, and that is very disconcerting." Now, if you don't know what disconcerting means, that means it's very, very troubling, all right? So, this particular disease that's circulating around, okay, it affects our tissues. Of course, we know that. We know what component affects our tissues because it's been out there in the news. I mean, this is not something that's not known, okay? They said, the doctor says, this is why we have been using this component in our experimental treatments. Let me see if I can rephrase this. The experimental treatments we are using to get the cells in the bodies, we are trying to manufacture that specific element, right? The thought was, if we can mount an immune response against that element, in theory, we could prevent that element from infecting the body. That's the theory behind the experiment. However, and this is a quote, when studying the severe reactions, heart problems, lots of problems with the cardiovascular system, including bleeding and clotting, all associated with that element, he added, in doing the research, it has been discovered by the scientific community that that element on its own is almost entirely responsible for the damage to the cardiovascular system if it gets into circulation. Now, you would say, oh yeah, but that's an if. Well, the study goes on to show that the experimental treatments do not stay localized where they are absorbed into the body, right? They're put somewhere else, they go somewhere else. And where they go is really, really important. It says, when this purified element is injected into the blood of research animals, the research animals experience damage to their cardiovascular system, and that element can cross the blood-brain barrier and cause damage to the brain. Now, we know there has been that brain bleed thing going on. So this is something that they found in the animal studies. Just want to point out that back in 2003, I'm reminding you, back in 2003, when they did this, the animal studies showed that at the first go around, when they did what they did, the animals had a good immunity toward what was manufactured in the lab. When the wild variety came around the next year, right, as these seasonal things do, 100% of the animals died, which meant, because we went through the long studies, we went through the animal studies, we went through all those studies, that meant that it was not released into the human population. Why? Because the animal studies showed 100% chance of death when the wild variety of the infection came back around. So what they're finding now when they're doing their experimental treatments with the animals, they're finding that the animals are having exactly the same thing that human beings are having, okay? The Biodistribution Study, which was obtained by Brittle, shows that this element gets into the blood where it circulates for several days and then accumulates. That means it sticks and stays in organs and tissues, including your spleen, your bone marrow, your liver, adrenal glands, and in quite high concentrations in the ovaries. I'm going to tell you, if it's in the ovaries, it's going to be in the testicles too. I'm just going to throw that out there, because if women get it in that particular part, men are going to get it in their particular part, because that we're made the same. Not the same, but similar. You get the idea. So this is what this could mean moving forward. If it crosses the blood-brain barrier, that means that dementia could be there. That means that that severe bleed could be there. Memory loss, memory focus, being able to attend to tasks and all that thing could be damaged because of what is left behind. Your spleen is your major organ of your immune system. So your spleen and your thymus are your major immune organs, and so it lodges there. It lodges in your bone marrow. Well, what happens with your bone marrow? Your bone marrow makes your red blood cells, your white blood cells, your natural killer cells, all of your T cells. What is that? That is your immune system. And so it is damaging our innate immune system. The liver. Talk to me about the liver. Your liver is your largest filter in the body. And so we love our livers, right? But the liver needs to be decongested from time to time. It's a whole big story. You know, it's a whole lot of things. I don't have time to tell you about that all right now. But the liver is your main filter. The blood goes through the liver every day, multiple times a day, to be decontaminated so that it can take oxygen and all that kind of stuff to your cells. And so this is really important. Adrenal glands. Now, your adrenal glands are little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. This is where your cortisol, your adrenaline, and there are other hormones as well that come from that. But that is responsible for you having energy for fight or flight situations. So when you are in an extreme emergency, you've heard the stories. Somebody ran over the kid, the mom had superhuman strength to lift the car and get her baby out. That's because of adrenaline. That is the fight or flight mode. We don't want to stay in fight or flight. That is sympathetic dominance. We want to go into parasympathetic dominance, which is a whole nother lesson. I'm just saying, if all of this affects the adrenal glands, and more people are going to be stressed out, more and more people are going to have panic attacks, more and more people are going to have cortisol spikes, no sleeping, all that kind of stuff. This is really, really important. In the glands, all of your glands, whether it's your hypothalamus, your pituitary, your pineal, your thyroid, your adrenals, your ovaries, your testicles, your pancreas, your thymus, your spleen, all of those glands produce hormones. So if these experimental particles are lodging in the glands, I am foreseeing a lot of hormonal disturbances coming down the road, okay? Back to the quote. We have known for a very long time that this experimental particle is a pathogenic protein. Now, we've done videos on pathogenic protein. Pathogenic priming, I think, is the name of one of our videos. It is a toxin, and it can cause damage to the body if it gets into circulation. A large number of studies have shown that the most severe effects of what's going around now causes blood clotting and bleeding due to the effects of this particle that they are putting in you on purpose during this experimental treatment. A new study in the Clinical and Infection Disease, that's the magazine that it was in, led by researchers at Brigham and Women's Hospital at Harvard Medical School, measured longitudinal plasma samples collected from 13 recipients of one of these experimental treatments. It starts with an M, so you can figure that out. 1 and 29 days after the first dose, and 1 and 28 days after the second dose. All right, of these individuals, 11 had detectable levels of this element in their blood plasma. So 11 out of 13, right? So this is not, even though it says if this gets in the circulation system, 11 out of 13 it did. That's a very, very high ratio of people that do that. 11 after as early as 1 day after the first dose. And then they had a subunit called S1 of this particle that was detected. This particle was detected an average of 15 days after the first experimental deployment. And one person had this detectable on day 29, 1 day after the second dose. All right, so that's important. The results showed that the S1 antigen production after initial deployment can be detected by day 1 and is present beyond the local site and in the associated regional lymph nodes. Now, this is important. Why is that? I just want to remind you, your lymph nodes are the little organelle, call it little organelle because they're tiny. You've got them in your neck, in your pits, down your spine, in your groin, and behind your knees. Lymph nodes have little Pac-Man creatures that eat up bacteria, viruses, parasites, whatever nasty is in there, okay? And so if these elemental particles are finding their way into the lymph nodes, that means the vacuum cleaner of the body, which is what I call the lymphatic system, it's going to be hampered. Why? Because it has been interfered with on purpose. Okay, this is on purpose. This is what this scientist is saying. We made a mistake. We are harming people on purpose, which is kind of like not a happy thought for me. In a study published by Nature Neuroscience, lab animals that were injected with this experimental procedure had particles in their bloodstream, and they developed cardiovascular problems. It also crossed the blood-brain barrier and damaged the brain. We now have clear-cut evidence that this experimental treatment makes the cells in the deltoid muscle manufacture this elemental particle, okay? And it gets into your blood circulation. So we have said this before, that your body becomes a factory for this experimental particle, right? It is not supposed to be in the body. So this is the thing that holistic people know. Holistic people know that your skin, okay, is your #1 barrier against anything getting in the body. Your mouth to your bottom, you've got the GI tract with a lot of mucus that keeps things contained so they don't cross into the blood. When you get leaky gut, all right, those conjectures or junctions that line the GI tract open. When they open, tiny undigested food proteins go through those openings, gets into the bloodstream. The body recognizes that as a foreign invader. And so we're not supposed to have anything crossing the skin, because the skin is our main immune barrier. We are, not we, not you, not me, but the people that are in power are crossing that barrier on purpose with pathogens. This is what this report is saying. All right. Bridle and the scientific community have discovered that this particle on its own is almost entirely responsible for damage to the cardiovascular system. All right, so that is important. He says when that happens, it can do one of two things. It can cause platelets to clump, and that often leads to clotting. That's exactly what we're seeing. It can also lead to bleeding, okay? Both the clotting and the bleeding are associated with, I hope I'm going to say this right, the nurses out there are going to get me, V-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia, okay? Lots of words. That means your body's going to make too few platelets. What are platelets? That's part of your blood supply that you need in order to be healthy. And you can't clot, your blood can't clot if you don't have platelets. He says that this specific particle in circulation would explain the reported heart problems in teens who have had this experimental procedure done. Stephanie Seneff, senior research scientist at MIT, said it is now clear, that the experimental drugs are being delivered to the spleen and the glands, including the ovaries and the adrenal glands, and is being shed into the medium, then eventually reaches the bloodstream, causing systemic damage. Systemic damage means it damages every part of the system, right? So please think twice before you do this. Please think twice. I want to move over to recent news, and I don't know if you saw the interview last week between a certain medical doctor and a certain senator from Kentucky. I'm getting censored here, so you guys need to just bear with me. But the certain medical scientist told the certain senator from Kentucky that absolutely the United States did not fund gain-of-function research. Now, we've talked about this in previous videos, so I just want to give you a little catch-up if you've missed it. A gain-of-function research will take a particle, it's in nature, it's all over the place, and they work with it, they manipulate it to see if they can make it more deadly. That's what gain-of-function does. The medical person said, absolutely not, we do not fund that. I think, if I remember right, somebody's going to tell me I didn't remember right, but I think in 2012, the President Obama's administration made funding gain-of-function research illegal. Okay, that's one good thing that happened in 2012, may have been 2013, around that time, okay? It is illegal to do that. So what happened, and I've reported on this before, but the United States sent money, I think it was around $350 billion, to a certain laboratory in a certain Far Eastern country where all of this originated, right, for gain-of-function research. So over the past 2 days, a BuzzFeed, I think, is the name of the organization. They did a Freedom of Information request, and they received a bazillion emails from a certain medical scientist. And it proves that this certain medical scientist lied to Congress when he told the senator from Kentucky that we did not fund gain-of-function research, okay? So it says he supported, this is a quote, the scientists supported the grotesque and dangerous experiments that made the certain pandemic possible. The emails, which date back to early 2020, show the scientist was worried that the public would think that the specific pathogen originated at the certain lab in a certain Far Eastern country. I feel like I'm playing charades here. Why? So the quote is possibly, why was he worried? Possibly because the scientist knew perfectly well he had funded gain-of-function experiments at that very same laboratory. There is a link to this. You can link on it yourself, and you can see the documentation behind it. I've reported on this before. We started working with this particular subject back in June, and so we've been telling you this, and it is now coming to light that everything I told you was absolute truth because it's been proved with these emails. And so this is kind of exciting for me because it's just validation. You know, you sometimes just don't know who to believe, but we're on the right track, okay? The emails show that this particular medical scientist and other virologists shared an article from Zero Hedge suggesting that this pandemic was a man-made bioweapon. Despite it being a plausible explanation, Zero Hedge was banned from social media, so they were censored. This showed that the virologists had done what we've been saying that they've done. Until recently, you were not allowed to suggest that this might be man-made. Why couldn't you suggest that? Because the fact checkers wouldn't allow it. Why wouldn't they? Because the scientists and tech monopolies said you couldn't. Okay, they assured the tech monopolies that it could not possibly have been man-made. So the tech monopolies shut down the topic. Okay, this is what happens when you don't have freedom of the press. This is what happens when you have the press controlled by the politicians or the money people or whoever is controlling them. And I thought, when I learned about yellow journalism back in middle school, elementary school, whatever it was, I was like, and my teachers told me this will never happen in America because we have freedom of the press. Well, I can just tell you it is happening right now in America, and people are damaging themselves because they're not getting the information that they need to get. According to the emails, this medical scientist has admitted that people who have had what's going around are likely to have substantial immunity, meaning they don't need to have the experimental medical procedure, okay? That's not what you're hearing. You're hearing everybody needs the experimental medical procedure, right? He's saying in the emails that if you have had the wild variety of the disease, you do not need the medical intervention, all right? He's never admitted that in public. So in October 2020, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wrote to Representative Bill Posey, who is a representative from Florida, asking the congressman to investigate the cause leading up to and contributing to the widespread disease. All right. In April of this year, they asked the Congress to support H.R. 834, which is a bill introduced by Posey that would create an independent bipartisan congressional commission to answer questions about where this disease came from. Personally, I don't care. I don't care where it came from. I don't care. We need to stop it. We need to stop the insanity. We need to get people to get the right information, the true information, so that they can make the best decisions that they need to make about their health care. What I'm seeing here in the center is people coming in, having these experimental procedures, and they're having drastic immune challenges, right? We're seeing women come in who are having drastic female challenges. We are seeing all kinds of things. I have not seen any brain bleeds. Well, and I wouldn't, because if you're going to have a brain bleed, you're pretty much going to die, and you need medical intervention, so I'm probably not going to see that. But I am very, very concerned about my family and my friends. I had a gentleman in to see me today, and I said, you know, he's been working with me for years. And I said, yeah, just have you had, what? And he said, oh, yeah, actually, do. I'm going, oh, great, And so when we tested, this man normally tests between 75 and 85, which is perfect. He tested at 15 today. 15, all right? That means his immune system is not able to mount the challenges that it needs to. It breaks my heart because it doesn't need to happen. It didn't need to happen. But because people were censored, because people have an agenda, all right, Google those words. You'll be able to see this stuff on your own. The planet, the entire planet has been assaulted with these experimental things. So I want you to have the information that you need. I want you to make the best choices that you need to make. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you information, okay? We can look after you. We can love on you. We can do everything we can to make it better, but we don't want to set your body up as a factory to produce these pathogenic proteins that will damage you from head to toe. Systemic issues, okay? So on that happy note, I'm going to say take care of yourself. It is the weekend. It is summer. School is out for most people, or almost out. So do a lot of self-care. Think about this. Do your own research. We'll post these reports in the comments so you can look up all the links and do all the research that you need to do. I love you very much. I'm honored that you spent this half hour with me, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.